I have a lot more free time now that I used to have when I was competing in mixed martial art, because we're never really entirely free.
Right.
But I have a lot more freedom now than I used to have. I've been very, very blessed, very lucky. And now I can spend a lot of time of my schedule on trying to comprehend the universe, the cosmos, and I love what you're doing. I mean, I've seen a lot of your stuff, and I think it's great. It's probably the most important thing in human history. You know, if this thing turns out to be real, and the phenomenon there is a phenomenon certainly but we sort of not knowing exactly, to pinpoint it exactly what it is, but I think it's very important to dismiss. We cannot dismiss
That's
this.
Right.
It's too important.
Well, one of the things that I've discovered down through like 50 years of supervising major investigations into different mysteries that have gone on, like getting to reveal all 47 pages of the Pentagon Papers, all 47 volumes, of the secrets about the war in Vietnam. People were so fixated, saying, look, there's something wrong here about us, sending 50,000 people over into the jungles to be fighting people that have lived there for like 100 generations. And, we're parachuting people in and attacking them. What's going on here? And so there was a mystery, and we got to investigate it and finally find out where these papers were that had done a major study of it, and getting at the papers and then going through the process of getting to publish them, and then investigating the Karen Silkwood case about the woman that got killed at this nuclear facility, right on her way to meet a reporter from the New York Times, and all of her documents disappeared. Where were they? Who did it? So what I've discovered in doing these investigations is that there's usually a number of totally coincidental things that get run into during the investigation. And if you try to figure out how they fit into everything, sometimes they don't. And it's like a red herring. You get all off on one course. And what's happened in the field of the UFO stuff, that there's people that get so excited about this issue, and then they become so convinced that it's real that they make up stuff. They're trying to hotwire reality. Of saying, if I can pretend that I, had an encounter directly with one of the occupants of the UFO, and this is what they said to me, or I'm getting a message, I'm picking up messages from an extraterrestrial, and then they lay out this entire narrative of what it's like on their planet, and what they eat for breakfast, and it turns out that it's not true. And what that's done is, it's in a certain sense, it's a threat to being able to untangle the information. And so that when a person such as you, who is genuinely fascinated by the reality of the fact that there's all kinds of things going on all around us, not only in the world but outside of our planet, that we haven't reflected on adequately, we haven't taken it into account in formulating our judgments about how we should deal with each other, or how we should organize ourselves. When a person finds themselves in a position that you have, where you have, because of your particular skills and devotion to a particular profession, have gotten to a point where you've achieved basically everything that you could reasonably have hoped for, and you don't have to keep on doing it. And then people turn to the larger questions. And this is
why we're here.
Where did we come from? Why is there a universe? Where did it come from? What's the story with all these stars? If they've got planets around them, do they have people from there? And then what's the story about this UFO thing, man?
I'm just an enthusiast. I love this subject. I think it's very important. But I've seen the document, some of the stuff that the Pentagon has declassified.
Yes.
If that's what is frustrating for me, and you're the perfect person that I can ask that question. If I try to be the devil advocate, I want to believe in the phenomenon, but the logic part of my brain is always reminding me to stay logical, to ask for evidence. Yeah. And where are the solid evidence? How come it's not at the news at 5 p.m. Is there a cover-up? Why you think this thing has been hidden if it turns out to be true?
Number one, it is true. And number two, it has been concealed consciously. And we now know because Richard Dolan, who was a PhD historian, student working on his PhD at University of Pennsylvania, dug into it and started filing actions under the Freedom of Information Act down in the United States. And he's actually secured copies of the previously classified documents showing that the United States Defense Department and Central Intelligence Agency's Operations Directorate consciously designed a program of lying about this. In denying that it was true and intimidating people. Anybody inside the military or inside the government that had any encounter with this information about them was threatened. They would threaten to fire them. They would threaten they can never get any other promotions if they talk about it. And then they actually started classifying it so that if anybody talked about it, they could be criminally prosecuted. And so that Richard Dolan found the documents. So they're in this 2-volume work that he did that's called UFOs in the National Security State, that people should all get a copy of. It's the kind of primer to start with. You just go through all of these different instances and all these internal documents where you have like internal top secret memos written by the head of the United States Air Force to the Secretary of Defense saying, look, these UFOs are real. These are real things that our people are encountering. They're metallic, they go faster than the speed of sound. Not only that, he said that they're coming in from like 80,000 feet, which is technically outer space, right? And they're coming down to the surface of the ocean in 0.7 of 1 second. And then stopping dead like that. And that will generate 6,000 Gs.
Why is it hidden? Is it because of the fear that the society will go completely insane, or is it because the fear that one of our adversary would use that to weaponizing it and we want to stay ahead? I'm talking about U.S., North America, and
it's the very end of what you said. It's we want to stay ahead. That's the whole idea. And the problem is one of the most important revelations that you come to when you're investigating this particular area is you come to the kind of shocking and kind of sad conclusion that our United States military views its mission as establishing full military domination over the planet. They can't allow any other nation state or any entity to be able to stand the slightest chance of being able to defeat us in a military engagement. They had that immediate reaction to it. When they, as far as I can tell, in all of the research that I've done, interestingly, well, I'll make it more simple because the crash at Roswell in July of 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, that one we know positively that they recovered a UFO spacecraft.
Of all the cases in the world of all time, that's the most...
well, that's the first one. That's the first one, at least. Okay. Because there's rumors about there having been this one in 1933, a crash in Italy. We've absolutely verified the one at Roswell because they've talked to actual people that were there who have seen them, et cetera. And people say, well, that's third-hand hearsay. You say somebody said that. But what I saw was that Jesse Marcel, who was the public information officer at the 509th Bomber Group where it crashed, that he sent out the press notice that they'd found a flying saucer, right? And it went out over the AP, the Associated Press wires, went all over the whole world.
And then they retracted.
Well, what happened is they immediately contacted General Roger Ramey, who was the commander of the U.S. Army Air Force for that whole region down in Houston, Texas. And they flew him in right that afternoon. And he called, 2 o'clock in the morning, he calls the editor-in-chief of the local Roswell Gazette or whatever it was, and orders him to send a photographer out to the airfield, right, where they've got this weather balloon debris laid out all around the floor, right, and he's kneeling down next to it. He was into wanting to get one of these shots, like standing on an elephant that's dead, so he's kneeling down next to it, and he's got a telegram in his hand. You can see it in the photograph. And as soon as I saw that, I said, someday we're going to have the technology where we're going to be able to see what that is that's in his hand. And sure enough, in 1995, when I was representing Dr. John Mack at Harvard University, and I got invited to go out to Laughlin, Nevada, this thing called the International UFO Congress, and to give them an update on how things were going in this conflict with Harvard University, right? And I get done doing the presentation, and this guy comes up to me out of the audience, and he says, Mr. Sheehan, he said, look, I've got to talk to you right away. So I said, what is it? He said, I think I found the photographer, back in 1947 that took these photographs. I said, shit. I said, if that's true, if that's the guy, what you want to do is go find him and see if he's got the negatives. Because it was kind of an historic thing, and so he may have kept the negatives. And if he's got the negatives, we may be able to blow them up, to get them digitized and blown up, and to be able to read that telegram. And sure enough, that's exactly what we did. That he went and found the guy. It was the guy. He did have the negatives. We got to put it all together. We got them digitized and got them blown up. And you could see like 80% of all the wording and stuff. Yeah. And it says, bring the discs to right field. And
right field, Patterson.
No, it was later Wright-Patterson. Okay, At that time, it was right field. Okay. That's what makes it so clear. It says here, bring him to right field, which in 1947 is what it was called, right? It says bring the disc to right field and bring the bodies. It said right in it.
You can read it when it's enhanced.
That's when it's enhanced. And so we brought it to Peter Jennings of ABC Television News, and he did a little special. He did a special on it, which exists, of saying, look what we found, and it puts the absolute lie to the fact that they went into these great lengths of pretending that it was a weather balloon. So we knew that was real. And so then, once you know that, then you go into looking at all the interviews that people did with the coroner that was asked to send out the three little children's coffins, and you find the nurse that was there when they were doing the autopsy on the beings, and then you start to unravel the stuff. So we know that one, it was there. And once you know that's real, then you start looking at the other reports and say, okay, if this is real and that they've got crap,
how many are real?
Then let's get looking at this stuff. And so that's what but mine was, as you may know, is that when I was at Jesuit headquarters in Washington, D.C., I was there. I was the general counsel in their social ministry office from 1975 to 1985, right? And so in 1976, when President Carter was elected, in November of 1976, one of the first things he did is he sent for the head of the CIA to come and brief him on UFOs, because he had seen one, right, when he was governor of Georgia. And so the person who was the head of the CIA at the time was George Bush, and he refused to give him the information, saying, he
doesn't have a need to know.
You don't have a need to know. And so he wouldn't give it to him. And so President Carter contacted the head of the Science and Technology Committee of the House of Representatives and said, look, would you get the Library of Congress Congressional Research Service to do a major investigation and find out what all the information is that we have inside the government about UFOs? And that's when I got contacted. I got contacted by Dr. Marcia Smith, who was the head of the Science and Technology Division of the Congressional Research Service. And she said, look, would you get access for us to the Vatican archives?
What was your reaction when that? Were you skeptic or?
No. I said I always assumed
your paradigm must have shifted like.
Well, no, I mean because I'd always thought it was true.
Okay.
I'd heard about Roswell before. Yeah. I'd heard about Betty and Barney Hill. I'd heard about all these different things, and I said, just as a professional investigator and an attorney that has to figure out how to get evidence to put into a court, I said that I thought there was adequate evidence around to really convince any reasonable person that this was going on. So when I got that information, I said, I didn't hesitate. I went right straight to my Jesuit superior and said, look, we've got this opportunity to potentially get information from the Vatican archives and provide it to the president. This is a great opportunity. He went and talked to the assistant provincials. They talked to the 10 provincials, and they all cleared it. Said, good, let's do this. And so then I became special counsel to this investigation. And it was in that context that I was given access to the classified portions of Project Blue Book. These are the 700 cases that they couldn't explain away. And they squirreled them away into this secret program, saying, let's get rid of all those other claims. Oh, this was a flock of birds, and that was, searchlights shining off the bottom of clouds. But there were these 700 plus cases that they couldn't explain away because they had too many witnesses, or they had the witnesses that were totally impeccable. They had photographs or a movie camera.
If the actual president doesn't know about it because he doesn't have a need to know, but I guess there must be someone that knows that. Like, I know it's highly compartmented, but there must be at least one or a few people that knows everything about the phenomenon. Who do you think would it be? Like a guy like Bush Sr. would have known.
He ended up being one of the people that knew eventually.
Vladimir Putin, do you think? I mean, it's in Russia, but do you think in this environment he would know all the...
They know however much they've found out. I mean, in Russia, you can be sure that Putin knows whatever it is that they've figured out so far. And they surely, we are confident they have at least one craft that they've recovered. So they've got one, so they know it's true.
He was I think in the KGB.
He's KGB,
right?
he was.
So he must have had
not everybody, because not everybody in the KGB would get it. Just like everybody that's in our CIA isn't briefed in. There's a special division, there's a Science and Technology division in the Operations Directorate of the CIA that are the ones that are responsible for a thing called Global Access Program. It's a coded program, special access program.
Do you believe, like a man like, for example, Elon Musk, he claims he has an all-pass access, he would have known, that's what he says.
He does not know.
He doesn't have a need to know.
He does not have a need to know. He does not have a need to know, and so he's not briefed in. Now, the rules and regulations that are being abided by right now by the Trump administration are different than many other administrations.
Yeah,
sure. He's a little less... let's say a little less respectful for tradition. So it's not clear exactly what's going on. But and he's been briefed by people who have told him some things. That he's been briefed. I know two guys that briefed him, but those guys didn't tell him everything. I know they didn't tell him everything because I know things that they know that they didn't tell him. So I know he hasn't been briefed in on the whole thing yet.
It's certainly taken very seriously by very credible people. I've talked myself face-to-face with Marco Rubio.
That's right.
And he says to me, like, yeah, it's a real problem that we have. We need disclosure.
Rubio's the guy. Yeah. Rubio is the guy. He's Secretary of State now. He's primarily responsible for figuring out diplomatic relations with the extraterrestrial beings. I mean, that's an extraordinary challenge that he's got.
Does it mean you believe that he met face to face?
No, he hasn't yet. I don't think he has, but he should be. I mean, he should do that.
So because that's officially his job. But there's a secret. Would you say there's a secret organization in the government that keep that away from happening? Right?
There is. I'm positive that there is.
What do you believe would be the best solution to expose?
I think that you'd have to have a critical mass of members of the Senate, for example, the key Senate, in the Intelligence Committee, who would make bold to issue subpoenas. For example, to issue subpoenas to Luis Elizondo.
Yeah.
And to Chris Mellon. And say, look, I know that you've got security clearances, and I know that you've been instructed by people to not tell us. We're the Congress of the United States, and you've been instructed not to tell us. But we're telling you that you have to tell us.
Okay.
Okay? And that you don't have...
You don't have a choice.
You don't have any choice. You've got to tell us. You can put us under... We can put ourselves under whatever restrictions that we think are necessary.
Is this has something to do with... I remember, I've watched the speech of Eisenhower. Yes. That he talks about the military-industrial complex and the danger. And even though he was a general,
he was worried.
He was worried that if the military take control, war become profitable, and maybe this has something to do with.
It does have. There's
a branch of the military that
there's no doubt. There's no doubt that they have developed the practice of working so closely with aerospace corporations for making new jet fighters and in other military construction companies, like making big aircraft carriers, and then those companies hire the generals after they retire, and they bring them in and pay them $500,000 a year to be like an executive vice president. And so what they're doing is they're developing a culture in which the people that are the highest ranking people in the military that are responsible for choosing corporations that are going to build military equipment, that they do favors for them, and they get them the contracts, and then they're hired to work for them. You know, and it's like, on the face of it, it's like potential corruption happening, and of course the potential usually gets realized, and so that they've developed that. But this is something even more so, and this is directly analogous to a precedent that got established before. And I believe that all the evidence shows, if I were in front of a jury right now, I'd say the evidence that we're going to present to you is going to convince you of the following, okay? That when we recovered
to expose the phenomenon, right?
Yes, I'm going to say that we're going to show you the evidence that makes it convincingly clear to you that in fact a UFO crashed in Roswell and that we recovered it. And what happened is President Truman at that time set up a special panel of people, which included people outside of the government. In
private sector.
In the private sector, and some military people and some intelligence people, and put them together and said, you people take this and don't tell Congress about it. And don't tell anybody else in the Defense Department about it. Don't tell anybody about it. This is so incredibly secret. We have such a potential advantage to gain over everybody here with this kind of technology. And plus we don't know exactly what it is all about yet. So don't do that. And they took it, and there was a precedent for this, because that was in June of 1947, or July of 1947 rather, right at the very end of World War II. We found out about the fact that the Japanese had buried in the Philippine Islands, 176 different tranches of gold and silver and platinum and 50-gallon drums of diamonds and rubies that had been pilfered all through Asia by a special unit of the Japanese military from like 1932 all the way up to 1941. And there were 176 of these troves, and they moved it out of Japan when they thought we were going to invade the islands of Japan, so they could hide out this treasure. And so after the war, they could come back and get it, right? And so it turns out that what happened is at the end of World War II, the G2, the head of U.S. military intelligence in Manila, his name was Edward Lansdale, Captain Edward Lansdale, realized that this was here. And what he did is he kidnapped the driver, the private driver for General Yakushima, who was the guy that was in charge of burying all this treasure in the Philippines. And they kidnapped him and tortured him to find out where these, and they recovered 12 of these troves out of the 176. And it turns out, and it turns out in every single one of them, there's $100 billion. $100 billion of gold and silver and platinum ingots and big 50-gallon drums of diamonds and rubies. And they're buried separately all through the islands in the Philippines. And they recovered 12 of those. And they went directly and told Truman about this, had a meeting with Truman, his chief of staff, Clark Clifford, set up the meeting. And they came in, Ed Lansdale, along with the G2 of General MacArthur. His name is Charles Willoughby. We know all about this. Went and had the meeting and said, look, we've got $1.2 trillion in gold and silver and platinum bullion and these drums of diamonds. And he said that, so what they did is he immediately, Truman, called in Secretary of War Stimson into the meeting and said, look at what we've got. Stimson said, hold it a second, let me get my deputies in here. And he brings in his 3 deputies of General Stimson. And it was Robert Lovett, and a fellow named John J. McCloy, and a fellow named Robert Anderson. And they came into the meeting, and they agreed in that meeting to set up a private trust to keep all of this in and not tell Congress about it, not tell the other people in the Defense Department, don't tell anybody about it. Have it be a private group. And they lifted all of that gold and treasure out of the Philippines, just the 12 tranches of it.
They're still out there.
All those other ones. Marcos found 2 of them, you know, and there's another one that I was directly involved in. I knew all about it. The Senator Pimentel, the president of the Senate, found one of them with the assistance of Mr. Aya. I was in the meeting when they tried to get me. They tried to get me to agree to let them take it out of the islands. They were offering $10 billion to the Catholic Church if we would agree to let them take it privately and own it. And I said, no way. Well, anyway, it's a long story. But the bottom line is that this is a precedent that Truman did this with regard to that treasure that they had, and they took it and they flew it out with U.S. military transport. And they flew it to Switzerland and put it into the bank. And then they issue gold certificates. They're just like bearer bonds. They're like cash in that they used them for covert operations all throughout Europe.
So that's how the funding.
That's how it started. And so they had access, as of 1945, they had access to $1.2 trillion.
Right off the bat.
Right off the bat.
That's a good start.
And so when they recover in July of 1947, 2 years later, they recover a flying saucer from another civilization. He sets up a similar operation, saying, look, don't tell anybody. You guys are going to be in charge. Not the same guys, but you other group of people who they call the Majestic Group. That was
Majestic 12.
Yes, it's NJ12 they call it. And whether that's the exact name of them or not, and whether all the documents that they recovered about all that are absolutely true, we're not certain yet. But the bottom line is, it's absolutely clear, because I know positively there was a precedent for this. That it was exactly what he did. And so he just did the same thing and set up this other group. And so their progeny down through the years, each one of those 12 men that was in that original group had to hand pick his successor, somebody that he believed could carry on the tradition, because that's back in 1947. And I personally believe that we've tracked down where they meet and what the group is. And that there's a group that is called the Monte Carlo Committee. It's what they call them. It's the code word that they have from them, called the Monte Carlo Committee. And they meet in Monte Carlo. And that they've got people that are not Americans on it now.
Oh, really? So it became a sort of
it's kind of an international group. And they're actually a high executive committee of a thing called the International Sovereign Military Order of the Knights of Malta.
I heard, yeah. I've read into, I'm trying to get into the rabbit hole, so I've heard of that. Do you believe it's no longer only a U.S. thing?
I think they've got people.
Russia, China, everything?
It's not clear. I think it's dominated by Western powers. That they still have got this thing. It's the socialists and communists that they're worried about.
I see.
Because these are business people. These are American business people and military people that believe that we ought to be superior to anybody who are socialists. That's the key, right? And so that's what I think is going on. But that's kind of, in a sense, mundane. You know, it's like, you know, when like there's an old Sufi saying that I've heard me say, like, when a pickpocket meets a saint, all he sees are his pockets.
Yeah, of course.
And so these guys are all into this kind of thing, this clandestine, let's keep it secret, let's back engineer it and make military equipment. But, you know, there's this whole other dimension to the thing of going, holy shit.
It's a crime against humanity to keep that secret from the...
And let us be, you know, using petroleum, you know, and trying to go to Mars by, you know, lighting a fire underneath a rocket and shooting up into the sky, when you've got all of this other kind of stuff that's available, just to try to hold on to it, to maintain military superiority over people. And so those people can't be the ones that make these decisions.
Yeah.
Because their assignment is too narrow, you know, and even they themselves realize that it's a very narrow focus that they've got. And so that's why Rubio is so important, because Rubio is now charged constitutionally with responsibility for figuring out diplomatic relations. And now that he knows that there are the extraterrestrial beings, there are tens of billions of other stars, there's 500 billion 500 billion other star systems in our galaxy alone, right? And they've realized that virtually every single one of the stars has planets.
Yeah.
And and like at least 20% of them have stars that are in their Goldilocks zone, that are rock solid and they're like Earth people, so that we're going to have tens of thousands of other civilizations.
Yeah, I mean, how long it takes? I mean, maybe there were other civilizations before us here. I mean, we don't have the evidence, but look at the time that it takes until that we know that it happened for sure.
Yes.
If you make the calculation, I mean, I'm not an astrophysicist or a mathematician, but I know that if you make the calculation of that probability, there is certainly other civilization. The question is, did they came here, or are they from the NHI, the non-human intelligence that came here? Are they from another star system? Are they from another dimension? Are they, I don't know, Atlantean or Lemurian civilization that sort of disappeared, went hidden, and then did re-emerge? Are they from the future? Us from the...
You can tell that one of the things I discovered in doing investigations, I say that usually 2 or 3 different explanations come together. And if you're trying to figure out one simple explanation, you're missing part of the evidence. And other people are pointing out that other evidence is kind of contrary to what you think. But the bottom line is now that assuming that there's tens of thousands of other intelligent civilizations just in our galaxy, and that all there have to be is a handful of them that have actually developed the technology to be able to have superluminal flight that is faster than the speed of light, whatever it is. That just all there has to be is a handful of them, and we have direct empirical evidence that they are in fact here. And in fact, they've said so, that they've told hundreds of people that they've abducted. They've had telepathic conversations with them, and that once you get past the hurdle of knowing this is real, then all those other stories start to make sense. Of people saying, "Oh yes, in fact, of the people that John Mack interviewed, why would like a 3-star general in the United States Air Force risk his entire career by insisting upon filing claims of an encounter with UFOs? Why would he do that? It's contrary to every single rule of evidence. They're not going to do that.
I'm sure there's a lot of things that are not true. Maybe some of them are because people are just dishonest, but some might be maybe a disinformation campaign from the group that want to keep that secret, because the strategy is to add BS through real stuff, so it makes it all BS.
That's right. Poison pills, they'll put them in. But the bottom line is that we've had to engage in getting through all that in all these other investigations we've done. In the Karen Silkwood case, when they killed her, we had FBI reports saying, they found chemicals in her blood and that she was asleep at the wheel, and then we show that the steering wheel was bent completely over like that. That doesn't happen if you're asleep. We've unpacked those kind of disinformation things down through the years. That's why our New Paradigm Institute is so uniquely situated, because we've done these professional investigations down through the last 50 years. And other groups haven't. They're enthusiasts and they're very interested in stuff, but some of them are very gullible. They'll believe anybody who comes through the door and tells them anything.
Yeah.
And then they get really confused because they have conflicting stories. They don't know what to do, right? And we're very careful. We filter the stuff very tightly. We have psychological stress evaluator access. It's not like putting somebody on a regular lie detector, which they can beat, but a psychological stress evaluator, you don't beat a PSE.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, it's a special device. That it's a special system. You interrogate people, you ask them the questions, and then you register the involuntary tension in their vocal cords. And you can actually put that data into an AI system, and it tells you exactly what it is they're lying about.
Wow.
And then it actually directs you to the next question. It's an extraordinary.
And it's unbeatable.
It's unbeatable. No one's ever beaten it. There are professional methods that can be used, and we have available to us at the New Paradigm Institute, and we have the background and the record of investigations to show that. And plus, we work with military intelligence guys. Not CIA people that are in charge with deceiving everybody, but military intelligence guys, CID, criminal investigators, United States Marine Corps, Air Force Office of Special Investigation, U.S. Army. We had the commander of all U.S. Army criminal investigative services, one of our staff guys. You know, I mean, the left-wing people get mad at us. Why you have all these military people around you? I say, well, because they're the ones that know how to do the investigation. You know, and plus they have the sources. They can get at the people to get the information that we're after, right? All you need to focus on to begin with is part of it. Is look, there are people from extraterrestrial civilization that exist in our galaxy. Some of them have figured out how to get here, whether it's superluminal flight or a more very sophisticated thing, which is, you've heard of that double slit experiment, where they get a photon.
Oh yeah,
and they shoot a photon and it goes, splits and it goes through the two slots.
Quantum entanglement.
Yeah. And but what you do is that when you direct human intention to it, you can control which of the two slots it goes through.
Okay.
You know, and it's a long and involved thing. But what part of the transportation system they may have is this: is they have a craft, they have it at their place on their planet around their star system, and then what they do is they do this intense remote viewing down to our planet and visualize a particular place on our planet, and then project this thing so that it appears like in both, like Schrodinger's cat, so that there's like two different potentials of this being in two different places at the same time. And then they have some kind of a technology that is what they call psionic assist, they call it. And that there's a technology in which they can super intensify the intention of focusing the craft to manifest in this other place. And then it disappears from its own place and appears there. And so it looks like it's coming from another dimension because it actually kind of uncloaks. And so people go, whoa, that looks like it's just materializing out of some other dimension. But actually it's the mode of transit that they're using, coming from another planet, right? Another star system. So people go, oh, I think it's interdimensional. And then they study all the fact that there's all these different vibrational dimensions, and they say, oh, that may be it. And then all it does is obfuscates the obvious. You know, that there's people coming from another star system. Yeah, you know, we're getting set to go to other star systems already with even the kind of technology that we had. You know, it's going to take a while, but we know we're going to figure it out. And they've had like, you know,
hopefully they have stuff in the secret department that are, you know, way more advanced than the rocket and the.
Yes, they do have. You know, and so the bottom line is that what we're trying to do at the New Paradigm Institute is focus on this part of it. Say, look, let's get this thing settled first, okay? Let's figure out who the people are, how many other star systems there are in our galaxy where life has developed, what number of them have actually developed superluminal travel, you know, how many of them have actually come to our planet, that we appear to have at least 5 or 6 different species that are here. Right, and Eric Davis just listed them in a House hearing. They met with Congress people and said, he said, look, I've been working on this for 40 years. Let me tell you who the species are. You know, there's the short grays, and there's the tall grays. Sometimes they're called tall whites. You know, they're like almost 6 feet tall, but they look like it. They got the great big head and the big almond eyes. You know, and then there are the reptilians, who get really bad press. Because people are kind of afraid of reptiles, you know, in our history, you know, so that we project onto them a lot of really bad stuff. And the people that I've talked to who have had face-to-face encounters with some of the reptilian beings say they're very kind and very, very positive and friendly, you know, that they've encountered. And then there is some of them call them insectoids.
Insectoid, yeah.
But they're actually, they call them mantis people, because they look like a praying mantis. They're big, like 7 feet tall, very thin, skinny. They call them the mantis people. And then there's this other whole area that is a kind of total wild card of these so-called Palladians that look apparently just like us. If that's true,
common ancestor,
then that means common ancestry, potential genetic material shared.
Like the way that people describe these non-human intelligence being, why are they all humanoid? Is there because common ancestor, or is that the, how can I say?
It's a natural law, like that makes
natural law of an intelligent form,
and that can move around and be adequately mobile. So there's a lot of really important questions still, but the question as to whether this is going on or not needs to get resolved. it's clear that it's going on. Everything isn't thoroughly understood about it all, but at least we know that there's other. Our scientific community has only been willing to acknowledge that there's any other planets outside our solar system only for the last 25 years. We can't start making any kind of computations predicated upon an assumption that there's other planets because we haven't seen them yet, and we haven't measured them, we haven't weighed them, we don't know that. So they're applying the kind of scientific, logical, positivist, materialist worldview to this, and they're excluding everything that they can't perceive, and we know that there's stuff beyond our light spectrum that we can see. We know that there are planets out there now that we've seen them and we've measured them through the James Webb telescope.
And another thing that fascinates me is the possibility that also we talk about beings now that are probably carbon-based, like us.
Yes.
How about the one that are
silicon-based?
Yeah, or energy-based, or in a different sort of
vibrational frequency.
Yeah, because when you talk about psychedelic or dreams or what I mean.
But what I'm suggesting is that you deal with this thing first.
Of course.
To get a base set of calculations. So let's deal with the simple existence of other extraterrestrial life.
Material.
And some of them are here, and that we've met them. There's been encounters with them. It is quite clear that there's some kind of communication going on with them. That you can't have this going on for 80 years and have our military intelligence community not attempt to establish some kind of communication with them.
And also when you read about it, like I'm just an enthusiast. I love to read about history. A lot of primitive culture and ancient culture talk about knowledge they get from star beings.
They're very specific about it.
Yeah,
star people.
So it's very interesting. Why would they? I mean, a lot of people see that as a myth, as a folklore. But what if it's turned out to be true? You know what I mean? Why we always say that? Oh, we disregard it completely.
Well, because it doesn't fit into a particular scientific paradigm right now.
That's right.
Okay, and so what we're doing right now is we're trying to utilize the tools of science in physical measurement and material analysis to get as much information as we can with the equipment and stuff that we have now. But the fact of the matter is, even with the equipment and the means that we have at our disposal right now, we're in possession of so much information that makes it overwhelmingly clear.
I mean, I have a chance to travel around the world. I love archaeology and history. I went to Egypt, to Baalbek. They have that in Baalbek, the Temple of Jupiter. They have a platform where they have the trilithon stones. They're 800 tons block that have been moved from a quarry that is about 2 kilometers, about 1 mile away.
Yeah.
Like in the hill.
Yeah.
I know they say, they use some wooded log and stuff. I'm like, I think it would have been crushed. I mean, I'm not an engineer, and all the engineers that I've talked to, they say to me that it's not the way they have done it. Maybe there's a way that they have done it. I know they have done it because it's there. That's the evidence, but
that's right.
I don't know how they have done it. Did they add help? Did they add knowledge? Or is there a time that our civilization rises, then sort of fall, and we lost our knowledge, our technology? It's very interesting.
No, it's extremely, and what you really need to be able to do is, one of the things that they train lawyers to do is to, when you're confronted by a really complex kind of situation, and professional investigators get trained like this, is, take it slow, and just like coming into a room that's been hit by like a hurricane, you can look at it and say, whoa, this is impossible. We'll never get this room back together again, but you will. But you have to take it step by step. You have to just move all the stuff of a certain kind into one pile, and then you go through these steps, just like climbing a mountain. You climb a mountain one pinion at a time. You have to have your strategic plan as to where you're going, but you have to drive that pinion, make sure it's there, make sure it's tied down, and then you're safe. to go to the next spot. You don't go to the next spot if you can't get there, you know, and you do this in an investigation the same way. And what I'm saying is that what we need to do is we need to drive some opinions in here, in that this existence of an extraterrestrial civilization is so clear. And that's why they've, in order to protect the secrets, they've set the parameters so widely that they aren't even going to tell you that there's life out there. They're going to go from one planet to another, and they're going to try to find, we're going to find a little single cell life form under some, you know, frozen sea and some distant moon, and then we're going to go, oh, eureka, we found it, you know, and,
microbes,
and they're going to try to do it that way. You know, that's their plan. You know,
there is, like, we talk about evidence because that's how our society works, and that's the scientific method. We need undoubtable evidence, you know, like, but there's a lot of things that are, like, you look at the picture that have been taken on Mars, like this square shape.
It's the beginning.
Things like this, I'm like, yeah, that's the beginning. But now we have all access to technology that we can look for ourselves, like satellite imagery, things like that we can see. That I think we live in an interesting time that now the information is not only concealed to a certain group of people, it's open to everyone.
Open source.
One thing that sucked though in all of this is that there's a lot of disinformation and BS. So you need to be able to trim what is real, what is not, because when you go online and you look for something, you can't get anything.
Well, and this is a really complex part of the problem, is that the stuff with AI now, that I was just looking last night that Tyler was showing me pictures, like video, little vignettes, like little 2-minute vignettes. When they've got AI that are so sophisticated now, they'll say, show me a realistic video of a SWAT team attacking a building with the drug people in it. And it's produced an entire video. And it's got like live people, looks like, you know, with characters and qualities and accents and the whole 9 yards, all their uniforms, all the backgrounds, and it shows them attacking a building. And it's all created by the AI, completely fabricated. There's no event like that ever really happened, but they've faked it.
So how can it be proved now? Because everything is disprovable, because a lot of people in their mind that are very skeptic, like, and I'm I want to believe it, but there's a logical part of me that want to be skeptic, and even though I'm convinced that we've been visited, you know, but there's a part of me that needs proof. But in the mind of most of the people, they believe that the alien will land at the White House and it's going to be at 5 o'clock news. Hi, we are the civilization coming from Mars. And it ain't going to happen like this. You know what I mean? It's the same way we don't go to the monkeys in the forest and, hey, you know what I mean? Or the ant on the ground. And
right. Here, take me to your leader.
Exactly.
No. So we're there right now that we're extraordinarily privileged, because in the next 5 to 7 years, all of this stuff is going to come out. You know, that they've gotten. I showed it to you, that I've got a copy of the bill.
Yeah.
There's this 64-page bill that the United States Senate has passed. And it's clear that this represents a collective decision that has been made by the powers that be, that this is how they've agreed to have this thing go. And that they're going to have a process where it gets passed by the Senate, which we've already achieved. They've already agreed, and it was virtually unanimous. It came out of the Senate Intelligence Committee 17-0. This is it. This is it right here.
That's what you showed me. Right?
Senate Bill 2226. Here it is. This is what the thing looks like. This is drafted by the United States Senate. And that's for you to keep. You can
really?
Keep that under your pillow.
Oh, thank you.
This is how it's going to happen.
Nice.
And what they're going to do, we're going to pass this again through the United States Senate. We passed it already 17-0 out of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Every single conservative and liberal senator has voted for this in the Intelligence Committee. It came out virtually unanimously from the United States Senate. It went over to the House of Representatives, and the chairman then, in 2023, the chairman of the Intelligence Committee comes from the same district as the Wright-Patterson airfield and stopped it from getting past.
Another question I have for you. I mean, there's a lot of stories going on. One of the stories that another reason why it has not been disclosed is because there has been a lot of harm done to a lot of people.
Oh, yes.
And if the truth been disclosed, a lot of people gonna have to answer for the crime they have done. Not only to humans, but apparently to
yes,
NHIs.
Yes, they've shot down, or they've got a pulse weapon, some kind of electromagnetic weapon that they've used to knock down UFOs.
Is the Roswell incident was something that knocked down, or
no? That appears to have been some kind of accident. A lot of the people are dead that have done all this before, because they've been at this for 80 years. Mm-hmm. So people that actually were responsible for potentially killing someone to keep it silent, they may be dead as well. And so that that they don't have to worry about it, and so that there may be some institutional concerns. Oh well, if people in the Central Intelligence Agency ordered the killing of someone to keep them silent, then the institution of the CIA will feel that it'll fall on them, and they'll suffer recrimination. So there's some institutional protections that are going on, but there are people that are presently operational that have made decisions that they're criminally liable for. And that, for example, that this device, this technology that they have of being able to they have a thing you've heard Jake talk about it, and
Jake Barber.
Yeah, Jake Barber, that they have this thing called the dog whistle, this technology that they kind of turn on.
It attracts.
It tracks the craft. It sends out a signal like a telepathic signal saying, "Oh, please, we want you to come, and we're going to welcome you. It's kind of a welcoming kind of technology."
I have it. It's an hertz. It's a frequency, right?
Yeah. That's what it looks like.
And they, I think they have they documented online on I watch on YouTube Skywatcher.
Yeah, they Skywatchers. Yep.
Document
that's their dog.
By inviting these things, right?
And the problem is that they're talking about inviting them in and then knocking them down so that they can get them. But the bottom line is that they've had a process of locating them. The CIA, for example, has developed a really super sophisticated surveillance system that is able to actually track the UFOs while they're cloaked, while they're still at a vibrational frequency that you can't see them or pick them up on any kind of regular radar. They've actually got a system where they've been able, it's called Golden Dome.
You mean cloaked like a little bit like the predator sort of, like you can't see, but they're there.
They're at a vibrational frequency that hasn't condensed, hasn't slowed down to the point where you can see them.
Okay.
Right? And so they cloak like that, and they don't show up, you can't pick them up on radar usually, but the CIA has figured out this technology to find them. And so what they've been able to do is to find them, and then they try to lure them in, and what they do is they have this pulse weapon where they shoot it at them, and it interferes with their kind of navigational equipment.
Like a IMP sort of?
Yeah, sort of like that. Yeah, sort of like that. And but the problem is that when they shoot this out into a particular direction, it keeps on going. It's knocked down civilian aircraft by mistake.
I heard of that. That story that one crashes and it was because of that.
Yeah, that's right. And then they have to go and recover that and keep that secret and bury all those people and do all that. So that's real criminal activity. I mean, I mean, if you do it once, and it's called reckless homicide. If you're engaged in a crime that inadvertently kills somebody, it's still called felony murder. But the fact is, if you do it again, and it does it again.
Now
You're deciding that you're going to take it's what they call ancillary damage or collateral damage, and you're accepting that. Now they do that in warfare. that there are going to be civilians killed, et cetera. And the problem is these people are warriors, and that they have that same mentality. Okay, there's some collateral damage, which means you kill innocent citizens. And the same thing is true in their military program. That they were trying to back engineer some of the helmet that they use to do the telepathic navigating of the craft. That there's a helmet.
Yeah, the story is that these things are piloted by some kind of interface, right?
That's right.
With the pilots, right? It's not like I'm driving a car or you know what I mean?
Telepathic.
It goes through the mind.
There's a helmet, and they communicate with the craft, and the craft is sort of semi-sentient. That they think that like what would be the wiring in the craft is actually done with stem cells, and so that it's like dendrites or synapses like that are in the brain that are actually the kind of means by which the electric impulses go through the craft, and so they can communicate with them telepathically.
You would have said that to me maybe a few decades ago.
Yeah.
I would maybe not have believed it, but now with Neuralink and all that, it becomes a reality even in the mainstream world. So to think that
That's right.
something like that existed for a civilization way more advanced than us.
You got we're convinced so far, and it may be longer, but we're convinced that the physical universe, is at least 13.78 billion years old. Okay, our star is only 4.5 billion years old. There are planets in star systems that are as much as 8 or 9 billion years older than we are.
Yeah.
So that they've had 7, 8 billion years. Just think what they could think of. Well, you can't think of what they could think of. And so it comes out looking like a complete mystery to us.
The barrier will be what you can imagine. Basically, your creativity will be the barrier. The technology, everything is possible in a way that if you can think about something, you can create it. It's just to know how to navigate through technology and to make it happen.
But when it gets to the other side of that line, you don't even know what to think when you see it. You encounter it and you're just going, I don't have the slightest idea what this is. But the fact of the matter is, there's been so much written about this now, and there's so many people who have had kind of direct encounters with them. With John Mack, I got to interview a lot of these people. He had this thing called the Project for Extraordinary Experience Research that he set up in Cambridge. So I've talked to dozens of people that have had direct face-to-face contact.
John Mack is the one that study abductees as well, and is he the one that retrieves certain material out of the body?
No, that was another guy. That was John Lear.
John Lear
was getting the implants out of them, et cetera. John Mack went with us. John Mack and I went with Dr. Lear one time when they moved a thing from someone. But John was the one who was the head of the Department of Clinical Psychiatry at Harvard Medical School, where the military was sending people who insisted upon filing a complaint or filing a report about an ET encounter, and they were told, if you do this, you're going to have a psychiatric exam.
Wow.
But they insisted upon doing it anyhow.
Yeah.
I mean, that shows you how convinced they were that this was true. And so then they get sent to Harvard Medical School to get a psychiatric exam. And John Mack was the guy, he's the head of the department, that would do it. And after he'd done about a half a dozen of these things, he said, this is really weird. These guys are all within the normal parameters of psychological normalcy, yet they're all telling the same story. They're all talking about these things and describing them. And so he started saying, look, this sounds like it might be real, And so he actually called his mother. He was talking to his mother about it. His mother said, oh, you should talk to the Hopkins boy. That was a friend of their family. There was a Hopkins family that they knew. He's a very wealthy guy. He's a sculptor and an artist, but he has this hobby of talking to people that have had these encounters. So John went to see him and ended up getting introduced to dozens and dozens of these people.
Wow, that he had the contact.
Oh yeah, and so that he got to actually, as a professional psychiatrist, actually question them and go through the whole process and give them batteries of tests to make sure they were perfectly normal. And he did all that.
But why people get abducted? Like, why is that?
And the question is, how do they pick them?
One of the reasons I got interested about this phenomenon at first is because, you know, when I was young, I was having nightmares in a very young age, and I was running to my parents' rooms, and I still talk to my parent about it, and you know, until very late in my life, I was running to my parents' room saying, "Oh, I'm afraid there's monsters that come get me and stuff," and my dad was, "Oh, you're having nightmares," you know, and I didn't think much about it, and then later on, I found out about there's a phenomenon called sleep paralysis that apparently when you're in a state of semi-consciousness, you can freeze and your brain produces DMT and you can start hallucinating and stuff like that. And I learned about that later in my life, and then I made the link between what happened when I was young to my childhood and this, because I cannot really remember those nightmares that I had. I can remember that I remembered, because I used to draw the monsters, like the thing that came to get me. I used to draw it, and I used to tell my parent about it. And still, a few days ago, I was at my parents' house and we were talking about it. And they were like, "Hey, do you remember?" And they were like, "Yeah, you were telling us that they come to visit you and stuff, and you didn't like it, so you run to our rooms." And it's like I remembered that I remembered my dream, but it's like my memory over time got sort of erased, because perhaps the logical part of my brain is like, this is so ridiculous that it can't be true. It can't. And it's later that the reason why I got very interested about the phenomenon of UAP and all that is that I found out that I'm not the only one that had a similar experience. I found out there's a lot of people that have that. They call it sleep paralysis experience. And then I started wondering, like, shit, what if it's really like I got taken on board of a freaking crap, and I start going crazy about it because I start reading more about it, and I start to read and to learn about a lot of
there's people that are trained in, there's a thing called holotropic breathing that I mentioned to you, that Stanislav Grof developed, this Czechoslovakian, I think he is a psychiatrist, and there's this just simple breathing exercise that you can do that gets, and that's what John Mack would do. John Mack didn't hypnotize any of the people that he was interviewing. He had them do this psychotropic breathing, and they would get into real calm state, and then they'd be able to start remembering details of things that they couldn't remember before. And you can do that.
I mean, I'm kind of ashamed to admit that, but everything I say, it's by pure. I'm 100% honest.
That's exactly right.
And what I tell you from my perspective is what I think is the truth.
Yes.
It might not be the truth, but it's from my perspective.
But you're certain that it is at the time, and that's what's important.
Still to this day, I'm a grown man, and I can defend myself. I was world champion in mixed martial arts. Sometimes I wake up in the night, I go pee, and I feel like I'm tensed up. Like I go walk around. I'm like, man, I feel like I'm traumatized, traumatized about something, and I'm afraid that it happened again. And then I'm trying to be rational, saying, this is stupid. You know, like you're a grown man. You get like, and I'm not kidding you. Maybe I'm crazy. And when I talk openly about it, it's a very, very vulnerable side of me.
Yeah.
When I talk openly about it, like a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, he did combat sport, so he's brain damage." So like the same thing, like military people that have experience, they're all post-traumatic, you know, they all have problem related to that. So it's very easy to discredit me. But this is one of the experience, like early on I had in my life, like most of people that I talk to that are so-called specialists, they will say, it's a form of sleep paralysis. It could be, and I hope it is, because if it's not, man, damn, it's like crazy.
That'd be a lot easier, yeah.
But, and as much as I want to believe there is something, it's like I don't want to know. I want to stay rational, and
Well, you got to go through it, though. You got to go through the pain of getting out the other side. I can find a person around here, because they're trained people, that do this particular kind of breathing. And it's not hypnosis. You're completely in charge at all times. You maintain all your agency at all times, but that you get into a totally calm state, and you will be able to start remembering all kinds of things that you weren't able to remember.
I would like to do it, and I would love to document it. Like, I have no idea. I'm only telling you the story from my perspective of how it is.
That's right.
I don't know what it is.
But you'll find out. This will get you there. This will get you there. I know, because John did it professionally and said that, he swears by it, and that it's completely, people are completely calm about the whole thing. They're not at all. They get down to the point where they start remembering exactly what it was like, and it'll start to happen again. But then they'll say, but just remain calm, because you know that we're sitting here together. You're here now. This is remembering something that happened, and you'll be able to talk about it. And you just have a little video going, so that you'll keep record of what it is.
You're conscious all the time that you're in control
all the time.
That's important. That is good, because the other option was like to go through a regression, and I heard it's not very good for your brain to.
Yeah, I wouldn't advise that. I've never advised that.
Because these things happen before. Like, I started my career, because it's very easy to dismiss me. Oh, he's been in a full contact sport. He's brain damaged, CT. That's what people will say.
Well, you have to get used to this. The fact of the matter is that I've been doing these controversial investigations, for like 50 years, and I've had all kinds of people say all kinds of things, but I don't even pay any attention to it. So it's easy for me to say, because I don't care. But but you don't have to worry. You've already got yourself established. Everybody knows who you are. That you're. Yeah. And so the bottom line is you're inquiring.
As any human, I think it's all right to know the truth. And now I'm more of an entrepreneur now. So my credibility is important, but these things attack your credibility, because it's a subject that most people doesn't want to talk about.
But it's going to make you more credible with the people that you ought to be credible with, and that's just a kind of a different turn. But you're going to find a whole different group of people, a whole different group of community. The kind of people that are still ignorant enough and arrogant enough to try to dismiss you. You don't want to have to work with people like that generally, anyhow.
Yeah, no, 100%.
It's a much different group of people that you're going to be. That's why I'm glad the stuff that I kind of do. People say, well, you're never going to be a senior partner in a major Wall Street law firm. And I said, I couldn't give a shit about being a major partner in a Wall Street law firm, because I get to talk to people like this. I get to talk to people like you. I get to meet Lou Elizondo. I get to meet Chris Mellon. I get to meet, all of these wonderful. I get to sit and talk with United States senators, about this stuff, which is the most important issue that the human family can possibly be imagining. That not only that we have all these potential access to different kinds of technology that can deal with our global climate change, can deal with alternative sources of energy, alternative forms of transportation to distant planets where other civilizations, but this entire probing into the issue of the relationship between consciousness and the actual manifestation of reality itself. I mean, this is the ancient questions about what is the relationship between our perception of reality and reality itself. Do we have an effect upon actually causing reality to manifest in the next microsecond in a particular direction, other than it would have done if we weren't here?
Most scientists will, I think that it all start with, it needs to materialize first. Then once you have something that materialized, that you have a thought, and then you can, go with maybe perhaps something. But I believe if you think of a room, for example, is the room how it appears first. It appears in your mind, in your so I think it would be conscious first, then your conscious
brings it into being.
Yeah, exactly. Think about it, then it materializes. I think we got it upside down in a way.
That's all Plato.
It's possible, yeah.
Plato writes about that. That's the whole concept. There's an ideal concept that is framed in the consciousness, and then you take active steps to bring it into being. That there's a more prosaic way of doing it, of just that you actually engage in the activity of building out something that comports with what you've conceived of. But the other dimension is that there's a lot of tests that are going on now to show that that if you take an atom of any element and you accelerate it in these, like the CERN particle accelerator, and you smash it together like that, it breaks the atom up into neurons and protons and electrons. And if you take one of these little protons and you smash two of those together, it breaks it down into smaller and smaller pieces. Yeah. You can keep doing that, and they break the portions of the atom down into muons and leptons and kleptons. There's this whole descending size to the point where they get down to one of them and they clash them together and they disappear. But they go into what they call an inchoate quantum field. There's no material manifestation there at all, but it's a highly potentiated field. It's not energy. And
it does not react the same way it reacts in our world.
That's right. There's no material manifestation at all. But the fact is, in the next 1/10,000,000th of a second, it will flash back into material manifestation, either as a wave of energy or a particle of mass. And then it blinks right back out again, and back into an inchoate quantum field. And then it'll flash back into a material manifestation of either a particle of mass or a wave of energy. And they've monitored these things at the CERN collider, and they say they've tried to figure out whether there's a pattern to whether it's going to manifest as a wave of energy or a particle of mass next, and there's no pattern at all.
They can't find a pattern.
Unless you direct human intention to it.
Really?
If you direct human intention to it and intend for it to manifest as a wave of energy, as distinct from a particle of mass, it will do so to a statistically significant degree. And that's the key. Once you get to that spot, then you know that there's a direct relationship between human consciousness and the material manifestation of the material world. And so the question is what effect does that have collectively, of everybody collectively willing into being the next microsecond of incarnated material reality? And that's the ultimate question of metaphysics, the ultimate question of philosophy, the relationship between consciousness and material reality.
I'm a big believer that, like you talk about consciousness and in my field in mixed martial art, I had a dream when everything seemed at the time impossible. I had a dream, to become champion, and I was trying to force myself to visualize that dream in order to materializing it. Yes. Even though I knew it was not the dream that was coming towards me, it was me that needed to go towards my dream. But I'm a big believer in this, because it played a big part in my career for my success. Yeah. Because the more you visualize, the more it helps you build a confidence. And if you can have all the skills in the world, if you have no confidence in what you do, you can't achieve your full potential. Yeah. And one way to build it is, of course, through preparation. Absolutely, it has to be a physical preparation. The job needs to be done, but there's a part of it that I believe it's here, which separates sometimes, especially in my field, the champions and the contenders. There's guys that are just as talented as me, they were just as good as me, they work just as hard, but when it was time to pull the trigger, when the lights are on and it count and it mattered, they couldn't do it. And because they didn't maybe prepare themselves as much up there. I believe in that. I believe that the power of the mind, consciousness, is something that is very underrated.
And what we'll discover is that this comes down to the fundamental initial question about reality, and that is whether or not consciousness, as we experience it, is a function of the interface between mass and energy that generates as an epiphenomenon this phenomenon of consciousness, or whether consciousness pre-existed. any material manifestation at all. And how we're getting to the point right now when we've got the Hubble spacecraft up, the observatory, we're searching for the actual physical boundaries of the universe right now. We're trying to find out where the edges are of the expansion.
But it keeps expanding.
Keeps expanding away from us.
Does it expand faster than the speed of light, or because I think it's exponential, right? It yes. goes as faster, right?
The material seems to be able to be bounded by the speed of light, but consciousness isn't. Okay, and that's why we think that the reason that they can go faster than the speed of light is because they consciously conceive of the craft being in another place. And then it goes there. Then it's there. It doesn't go there linearly. It just is conceived of there, and it bops there. And so that whole the concept is that when you get to the edges, the absolute exterior edges of the material universe, then the question is, well, what's outside of there? What's outside of that, beyond that? And what the theory is that there's an infinite, absolutely infinite, and eternal sea of completely undifferentiated consciousness. And that the theory is that is the field that generated the material universe. That field existed, just abides, and what happened is that there was at one particular point, not in time, but outside of time, that where there appeared a particular differentiation. A tiny point of differentiation in the otherwise completely undifferentiated field of consciousness. And the point of differentiation had measurement to it, in that there were poles at the edges of the differentiation, and that what kept them in contact with each other, bonded to each other, was the initial wave of energy. And then they collapse back together again because they are wanting to come back into unity, and then it densified and generated the initial particle of mass. And that's where it started. It's just condensed consciousness.
And I wonder if it's the case, how many times that system has been repeating itself.
That's right. It's just gone on eternally. And during each, they call it the magnum annus, the point from there of expanding out and collapsing back again, they call the magnum annus. It's the grand year of the expansion and contraction of the cosmos. And that in the interim, we manifest. Both in the expansion and the contraction phase, we reintegrate and come back into being, and we are incarnated beings, and there are incarnated beings on other planets and stuff, and that's what's going on all the time. And so that we, as conscious beings, have the capacity to reflect upon that, to try to understand, and the question then is, how can we intervene? Can we intervene in a directed collective intention on causing the next microsecond of material reality to be different? So that this is the long conversation we had with Marlon Brando. Brando and I used to have these long conversations. He would call on the phone, and we'd have these long conversations because he thought everything was completely predetermined, and that there wasn't any way that you could break into with your exercise of will. No matter what you did, you could control local things, but it's all predetermined. Yeah. And we would have.
There's a good argument to make about that in a mechanical world.
Billiard balls, billiard balls.
Dominoes. Yeah.
So the bottom line is that these are the profound questions that you're getting an opportunity to get to try pay attention to. And this plan that they've got here, this has got a 7-year sunset.
7 years.
7 years.
Starting when?
Once this is passed.
Okay.
This has been passed by the Senate. Once we get this passed by the House, and the president appoints, there comes a point they're going to appoint this 9-person commission. There's going to be a panel. They call them the Board of Review. They're going to review all the information that exists anywhere within any of the 6 U.S. military services, and they're all outlined here. The 6 military services, the 18 intelligence agencies, the 32 United States Defense Department agencies, and all of the private aerospace corporations that have any information about UFOs from January 1st of 1945. It says it right here. okay? And they have to turn it all over. They have to turn it over to the National Archives, into a classified section of the National Archives. And the people who are in Congress who have the adequate clearances can get access to it. And the president is going to appoint a 9-person board of review that's going to review all of it. And they are going to be required by this statute to release everything that's 25 years old or older, which goes all the way back to Roswell, goes all the way back to whatever happened in 1933.
The Vatican, yeah, Italy.
All of that is going to have to be released unless the president himself personally, signs an executive order to keep a particular piece of information private. And according to this, he has to lay out his reasons for why it's in a classified memo. He's got to explain why it is that particular piece has to be kept temporarily from being made public.
It's a crime against humanity. It needs to be.
But that it has to, at the end, it too has to be revealed, okay, within the 7-year period. So this is the plan.
So when this is planned to start,
as soon as it gets passed.
When is the earliest that it can be passed, and when you think
this is going to be passed again by the United States Senate in July 25th or 26th.
Oh, so this year?
This year.
Holy shit.
This is going to be passed by the Senate. We talked to Mike Rounds right here. See, we talked to Mike Rounds. He said they're going to pass it again, and it's going over to the House side. And we're now focusing on the new head of the House Intelligence Committee because they got rid of Mike Turner, who's the guy from Wright-Patterson Air Force Field. He's the congressman who was the head of the Intelligence Committee, not coincidentally, I might add.
Do you think there will be, if it turns out to be passed, I don't want to sound pessimist, but do you think there will be resistance?
Oh, yes, because here.
And do we have the capability?
You're asking.
If they have technology that the stories is that they have technology that we do not possess. Right. Technology wins war, and
will they fight? Will they use the technology to protect themselves?
We have the numbers, but they don't.
That's part of what the challenge is going to be. So I know where the rub is going to be. What's going to happen is when this passes, and it passes the House of Representatives, the House and Senate majority leaders and minority leaders get to nominate 9 people. The Secretary of Defense gets to nominate 9 people. The head of the National Archives gets to nominate. And so what we do is we all nominate people to this board, and then the president has to determine who he's going to appoint. Okay? Now, the way the thing is set up right now, he doesn't have to pay attention to any of our nominations. They've been so kind of obsequious to the president in acknowledging his kind of authority in the area of foreign policy that they're allowing him to listen to all of our nominees, but then decide who he wants to appoint. But they have criteria here for these 9 people, that one of them has to be a person that has Defense Department experience, one needs to be a person with intelligence experience, one needs to be a scientist, one needs to be an historian, that they have certain criteria.
Yeah.
But that there's 3 wild cards out of the 9 people, there's 3 of them that are open nominees that don't have to be qualified.
Nothing.
Okay, and so that we get to nominate these people. And what we're going to be doing as the New Paradigm Institute is having people participate in this, having people all through the country talk about who they think ought to be nominated that meet these other qualifications, who ought to be part of these 3, and so that's where the rub is going to come. Because even though the president can disregard all of our nominations,
he will have a lot of pressure.
Our job is to put maximum pressure on him, is to say, look, here's the New Paradigm Institute. We've consulted everybody around the country. We're the only ones that have asked for popular intake on who they think ought to be on this panel. And so that, we're going to have people in every congressional district. We're organizing now a thing called Citizens for Disclosure. It's a whole citizens group. We're going to have a group in every one of the 435 congressional districts, and in all 50 states, we're going to have state directors, and we're going to put pressure on the Congress people to say, here are the people that should be on this panel. These are the people who care about the people. These are the people that want this publicly revealed. Even if a person is from the intelligence community, we want someone who knows all about the intelligence community, but still thinks we ought to all know about it. right?
It turns out to choose a person that we think is the most honest as possible, the most truthful and good.
That cares about democracy.
Benevolent, not malevolent.
That's exactly right. And but it's all in here. It's all set forth already. And people, I mean, we laid this on the desk of one of the staff people over in the House of Representatives, and they almost peed their pants. He said, "What? You mean there's actually something the Senate is? They didn't even know that it had been passed." You know, and here they're staffed to people that are in the House because they're so busy and they've got so many other things that they're doing that they don't even realize this is going on.
This is crazy.
Yeah. So this is one of the most important pieces of.
This is the most important. I mean, if the problem why we say it might be the most is because we don't know. Most people don't have the evidence as, for example, this piece of paper, like material that is true.
That's right.
But if it turns out to be true,
that's right.
It's the most important thing in the human history. The most important thing in the human history. It's more important than the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus. There's nothing.
It's more important than
nothing that can compare to this. Nothing. This is true. I mean, the only problem is if I wanted to believe, I want it to be true. Doesn't make it true, but I want it to be true.
You just got to not let that overbear us, not to mistakenly mistake a piece that suggests it may be true to say, oh, I'm totally true. It's, you have to be careful. You don't want to, feed that. But this right here, this is the most important pieces of paper that you've ever held in your hand.
I have another question. I mean, it's a real question. If it turns out that there is resistance for disclosure, who really pulled the string? Is it people here, or is it alien, or is it?
Well, the bottom line.
That's the bottom line. It's an honest question. Do they have an influence on what's going on?
Well, the bottom line is they could come and land in your.
Why they don't do it?
If they wanted to.
That's my question. Why?
You may have. I've said it once before. Is that Lou Elizondo and I and a couple other guys that were in his staff from ATIP were sitting in a little restaurant. Lou and I had just gotten through meeting with the Inspector General from the Defense Department and his people and briefing them in. And we were sitting in this little restaurant. Nobody else was in the restaurant. We were just there. And one of the guys said, it's so frustrating. Why don't they just come down and, land and talk to us? And I said, I think it's like this. There's this famous story of a little boy who loved butterflies. Right? And he collected butterflies of all kinds. He had out in his backyard, he had this big gossamer tent with butterflies flying around inside of it. And he was looking for a perfect specimen of a monarch butterfly to have. And he looked all around. He finally found a little cocoon of a monarch butterfly. And he brought it home, put it in a little box with cotton in it, put lights on it to keep it nice and warm, and kept watching it. And finally it got to the point where it had gone through the whole metamorphosis, and the butterfly was breaking out of the cocoon, and it was struggling and breaking through the little silken threads. And it gets down toward the end, and it's got just one little silken thread holding it in, and it's struggling and flapping and pushing against this thing. And the little boy's watching it, and he starts feeling, he started to feel really compassionate for this little butterfly. So he goes and gets a little pair of scissors and he clips the last little silken thread, and the butterfly comes free. And it's an absolutely perfect specimen of a monarch butterfly, except that it could never fly. Because it turns out that it was struggling against that last silken thread that was absolutely necessary to build out the muscle structure that enabled it to fly. Okay? This is
a good analogy.
We have got to break our own silken threads that we have woven around ourselves. Selfishness, greed, fear.
We have to pass the phase that we destroy ourselves.
That we merit
to be worthy to
membership. Because in order to participate in this other civilization, you have to lay these things down. You have to lay down your nuclear weapons. You have to lay down your armaments. You can't bring those out into the civilization because it's poison, and they've known it. they've experienced it over the millions of years, billions of years. That you can't have these kind of people come out into your civilization because they'll cause big trouble. And so we've got to break our own silken threads.
The only problem, I'm afraid, is that we don't have much time.
All species don't survive.
Yeah, and I'm not only talking about nuclear, like could be an asteroid, a volcano. Like if you look at history, I love paleontology, and there's a lot of stuff that happened that could wipe us.
And so the sooner the better. But we've got to be in the process of breaking these silver threads is what we're engaged in. We're going and sitting down with the individual Congress people. People can't believe that you're so naive, that you're willing to take the risk of people laughing at you, thinking you're crazy, ruining your reputation. Say, look if I'm not willing to undergo that kind of danger, then I'm not contributing.
Yeah.
If you don't go through the pain, you're never going to get the gain.
I think most of, and I say most, I include myself too. I think we're blinded. I feel that we would need, in order for people to really to be better, we would need some kind of revelation in order to realize that, we're not alone. So stop fighting against stupid difference, like artificial difference that we shouldn't care about.
That's what when I was little, when I first realized what stars were, and I said, wait a second, there's people on these planets around these. I said, it's so silly, the things that we're doing to ourselves. I said, you draw a little line in the dirt and you say, if you come over onto my side of it, I'm going to use my intellect to dig into the ground and dig out metals and melt them down and make bullets and shoot them into your body and kill you for coming onto my side of the line. I said, no, wait, that is so, it's absurd. It's absurd in light of reality. And that's what the moral referent is what reality is.
Another question I have is that, through the lens of Hollywood, they have sometimes portrayed the aliens or NHI, Malevolent.
Coming to eat us.
Yeah. But through the eyes of you say that most of the people in charge are a branch of a military. Maybe because that's their job to prevent that from happening. So if I see the world through their eyes, I can see why they. Not that they're bad, it's just that they don't want to prevent that from happening, so they want to keep it.
It's even better yet. If you realize that we have all 8 of these chakra systems functioning in our bodies, that each one of them has a completely different charism. The first chakra, for example, is complete survival. That root chakra, the red chakra, is, we're completely devoted to our surviving as an entity, right? And then the second chakra is our whole dialectic of the A and the B going up against each other, but it's also a creative thing of the yin and the yang. That's the second chakra. And the third chakra is this power chakra, this kind of assertion of your own kind of power.
Dominance.
Right? And each one of these chakras has a different charism. But the fact of the matter is that the wise being is one who realizes that all of them contribute to the overall harmony of your being, and that you can't eschew any one of them. You can't say, this will to survival, let's get rid of that. I mean, you'll be dead in a month, but you have to be able to have all of them operating in harmony. You have to have the energy flowing, the Shakti, the Kundalini energy flowing through your whole body to generate the kind of energy envelopes around you, to have the kind of resonance that you can close this message that you get from the universe, right? So that all these individual people who have these narrow focuses, what we've done is we've basically assigned chakra responsibility to a particular group of people. We've got those that are into the military survival. We got these into
scientists,
power. We got religious people that spend all their time sort of in the 7th chakra, all these, and they're all there. And the key is to try to get everybody working together. What you discover is, each one of these chakras has a light associated with it, a color, the red and the green, the yellow, the blue. And if you get a laser a laser beam of a pure light, one of the pure colors that we can see, out of the spectrum, and you shine the 7 different rays of these pure light forms, these primary colors, onto a single point, the interference pattern that they set up with each other generates white light.
Huh.
And so but once the light waves are there, that what we have to do is figure out how to use our intelligence to choreograph them so that whatever the interference pattern is that they set up with each other generates this harmonic. Just like with pure notes, if you put the notes together, they generate a harmonic that wouldn't exist at all. It doesn't come into being naturally at all. You've got to be able to get them into a certain kind of interference pattern to set up that overtone, okay? And that's what we're dealing with here. So that this is a science. This is a science. The Hindus and the Buddhists, they've been writing about this for 1,000 years. Yeah. This is a secret that is known. It's a whole mystical science about our human species. What we've got to do is let that enlighten us, and this is the kind of value that we can bring to the discussion, with the extraterrestrial beings. This is our human experience. We're assuming that they've had similar experiences. They're incarnated beings, some of them. They're organic, flesh and blood beings.
Do you think some of them are malevolent?
It's interesting. My assumption is at the present time that the malevolent ones would not be allowed by the others to come out off their planet, and infect the entire piece of the galaxy, that they'd be quarantined, like we are. Right now, trying to go out there,
And in a way, what is malevolent? Is it what does it mean? Is it like? Yeah. I mean, maybe it's because I'm naive, but I have a hard time to think that someone. I mean, maybe there is want to be malevolent to people. I think people want to do things for the best of their interests, and while they're doing it, it's malevolent for others.
They experience it that way.
I don't think they just want to be malevolent to be malevolent. You know what I mean?
It's one of the fundamental questions. It's one of the fundamental questions about good and evil.
Maybe revenge, it would be something, but there's a reason why he wants revenge.
That's right. But you have to break the cycle of revenge.
It takes a lot of strength. I think it's very it's honorable. Like when you find the inner strength to forgive someone.
It's always easy to tell other people to do it. Right. It's hard for you to do it yourself.
And if it would be a concept that would be understood in this world, that would make a better world.
And that's what you're putting out. When you can find it in yourself to do that hard part, and that energy goes out into the universe, it's a step in the right direction. Yeah. It's starting to break another one of those threads, and that's how this thing has to happen. And that's why going through this frustrating process of going in and talking to these people who, some of them don't even know the bill has been passed.
Yeah, most people have no idea. I know because I read and I'm really interested about that subject, and I have a lot of free time. But most people they work 9 to 5. They go on with their day. They have no freaking idea. No. And I still, once again, I have to remind myself that I try to be as logical as possible, and I can understand why it sounds absurd, but I want to believe, and I really hope, I want one day the world to free ourselves from that crazy materialistic war that we have,
and we have some of the opportunity to do it now. I mean, we have the thing where people say, "Oh, you get AI functioning is going to take everybody's jobs away, and they're going to have any work to do." They say, "Well, look at the fact of the matter is, if we if we come at this with a good heart and we have the right people that we, through a democratic process, choose to be our representatives, and we make this work. They've got the blueprint.
Yeah.
You know, the Constitution has got the blueprint of free speech, you know, and people get to vote, and people get to be educated, and the representatives are honest, you know, and they're not taking bribes from corporations, you know, and the judges are honest, you know. We've got the structure of this, it'll work.
Technology is there to make our lives better, but now technology, what it does, it takes away our job. But the purpose of technology is to find the real meaning of our own existence.
That's right.
That's the problem now, that the way our society is made is because we live in a monetary system.
Yeah.
And
if the fact is, if you don't have to go to a job, you know, like right now, half the people spend more than half of their time away from their kids.
100%.
And they have to put their kids into some other school, like, they go bringing their kid to a school to go in with a bunch of strangers, and they don't even get to see them. I mean, that's not a good structure.
The reason why I was able to dive into these subjects is because I had more spare time than an average person. I work hard to get more freedom.
Yes.
I didn't have the freedom I had when I was young. I worked really hard, and
You were a slave. You were a slave.
Slave of the system. I mean, we're always a slave in a way, because we're never fully free in a way. We always have responsibility.
Yep.
But now, because I have more freedom, I'm able to, you know, try to think about all these beautiful subject. You know what I mean?
And the bottom line is that, and you've also earned a certain degree of celebrity, so people listen to you, and so you have an opportunity to talk with them. You say,
I can bring more eyeballs on the subject.
well, more than eyeballs. You can bring actual creative new thinking.
Yeah.
It's not just getting their attention. It's that you can talk to them to say, look, let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. You don't know that this thing exists. You can say, here it is. Look, this is the United States Senate. All the powers that be that are represented in the United States Senate have come to this conclusion, and that they want to have this stuff disclosed. And we know that we're going to come to a point right here. You see this, that there's going to be is the Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon. But what this is called is it's called the UAP Controlled Disclosure Act.
Yep.
So they're planning to control it. And that we need to make sure that the control is a responsible control, that is rolling it out and making sure that it's going to get told to everybody, but in accordance with a time schedule that enables us to adjust our culture to it, to adjust our economy to it, to adjust our religious institutions to it, but it has to be rolled out. They don't want it all coming out.
There's a lot more to this. I see that there's the phenomenon, the ESP phenomenon, that is directly linked to UAP. Like all the millions of dollars that the secret project have spent to study those phenomenon, that you know, a lot of the data remains secrets. You know, like I think I've seen a podcast Al Putov was talking about it.
That's all got to come out.
It's crazy.
It's all got to come out.
I mean, once again, I want to believe in it, but it's so far out. Damn, it
is far out.
I just hope I live long enough to see it come to fruition. You know,
I can tell you.
Most people like the knowledge, and that's what they've been telling me. That's why I'm so excited about it.
Yeah. No, it's getting ready to happen. It's getting ready to happen. And that we need to make sure that it happens fully and it happens responsibly. And because most of the time, like almost nobody other than our institute, the New Paradigm Institute, are paying attention to, assuming that it's true, what are we going to do about it? You know, how
there would be no secret. People will be able to see things that are. We would have to learn how to be honest to each other.
Yeah, that's right.
Which sounds pretty crazy because I try to be as good as I can, but you know, I'm dishonest sometimes about people ask me certain things. I don't want to hurt them, and I tell them what they want to hear. But
what you'll learn how to do is you'll learn how to be honest with caring and compassion, and so that you can tell a person something that's true. You don't have to say, "Oh, I think your haircut looks like shit." You know, you can say,
"I think you should cut your hair differently."
You know, it is a little. As long as you really are loving, and the lesson that you learn is that if you can love other people as much as you love your own child, And that's how you learn. You say, this is a unique experience that you're having. And if you can see other people's children and other people themselves, and even the people that are doing wrong things, if you can have that same feeling for them, it's the only thing that melts their heart. They're hardened-hearted. In the minute that they can pick up on the fact that you're being judgmental about them, or you're dissing them for what they are, they say, you, and they'll just lock down. But if you can really be compassionate and honest with them and caring.
You need to be benevolent, you need to be good, not malicious.
No. And so that, and each of us has this opportunity. And I think that in fact, after based on everything, I've spent a lot of time on things, is that I think that reincarnation is true.
Could be. A lot of culture believe in it.
I think it is. And I think that just like energy never disappears, the consciousness, there's a
it transforms itself.
There's a book. There's a guy named, I think it's Michael Newton, his name is. He was a psychiatrist down in Florida, and he was doing regressive hypnotherapy. He was regressing the people back, and all of a sudden they punched into this other life that they had previously.
Yeah.
But what he did is when he got totally shocked that this person had fallen into this other previous life, and started telling, what he did is he brought them all the way to the point where they died in their previous life. And he said, now what's happening? How did you get here into this life? What happened in between then and now? And he went with them into that period. And he discovered that he's now interviewed over 100 people, that he's been able to track them into an earlier life and then find their immediate previous life and then get them to come into explaining what the process was in between. And it's called A Journey of Souls, that you should get it. It's Michael Newton, his name is.
Michael Newton.
The Journey of Souls.
And when we talk about this, I wonder if there is some guys that came out on their deathbed. I heard story of is it Werner von Braun that told his I think his assistants. I don't know if there would be a fake alien.
That isn't true. That didn't happen.
It's not true, right?
No, that's Carol. That's Carol Ross.
Carol.
I know Carol.
Not true.
I love Carol, and I've known her for a long time. But I don't believe that's true. I think that she just got a little carried away.
She wanted to make up a story.
She just wanted that whole thing. She wanted that kind of to make sure people knew, and she believed that it was true, kind of thing that it was happening. But I don't believe that happened, because she would have told me. I mean, I'd known her for 20 years before she said that at the May 2001 meeting of the press conference for the Disclosure Project.
Is there other people that came out like on their deathbed? Because me, if I'm part of a secret operation like this, before I die, I would want my
Oscar Wolf.
And unless I don't know if they threat to kill my family or whatever.
Colonel Corso did it. Philip Corso, who saw a UFO that was knocked down. It ran into interference at the Trinity site where we were going to test the first atomic bomb. Right, a craft had come in, and they had this new kind of intense radar up all around for security around it. And this UFO knocked its navigation on. It was forced to land. Colonel Corso was a range officer in the U.S. Army. He was a captain at the time, and he was in charge of the range security. And he was taking a lunch break, and he got one of the Jeeps, and he kind of drove off to the little side outside of the base, and he was up in the little hills. And here was a UFO sitting down in this little valley in between the hills, and he was completely astonished at this thing. And this UFO guy gets out of it.
And he came out.
The being came out and communicated to him telepathically, saying, "Look something's happened to our craft here. We're down. You please help us. That we need to get out of here." And Colonel Corso was completely flabbergasted, right? And the being pleaded with him, please, whatever that is that they're doing, have them turn it off so we can just get out of here and leave. And Corso said it was the most important moment of his life, so he decided he would do it. He went back and told them to turn off the radar for a couple of minutes. They wanted to retest it, and then they shot away like that.
Wow, no way.
That's cool. He left a little black and white 8mm home movie that he made of himself sitting in front of a camera like this, telling his grandchildren to be shown to them only after he died. So that they tell them, he wanted to make sure they knew that this had happened.
After he died?
Yeah, and so I saw it. I saw the video.
But this video was public or
no?
Okay, only for his kids.
No, it was for his grandchildren.
No, but he should have made it public. No, don't you think?
I didn't.
But now with AI, we can make anybody say anything.
Yeah, I didn't want to violate him.
No, of course.
No,
of course.
But George Knapp showed that to me. George is the...
Yeah, I know George Knapp.
George showed it to me. We were at this conference and he said, come here, I got to show you something. And somehow he had acquired this thing, and there it was, of course, so telling his grandchildren.
So at least it's encouraging, because all the stories sometimes I heard are negative, or maybe somehow people doing bad things to NHI or not. Now this is a good one. This is the first one I ever heard.
It was a good one. Yeah, it was just a really great. And then he ended up, becoming the colonel at the United States Pentagon, in charge of a foreign technology development. And in case they get a foreign military craft of some sort, and they can break it down. And he got given the technology out of the Roswell crash. And he actually got put in custody of it. And his job was to kind of help distribute it into certain corporations so they could use some of it. And that's where the silicon chip came from.
Oh.
It came out of the Roswell crash.
Okay.
In fiber optics. Fiber optics came out of there. And Kevlar. Kevlar came out of there. And there was another, the night vision.
Night vision, I heard that. I don't know if it was true.
These are all little pieces of technology that came out, and Corso talks about this. He wrote this book in Italian. They published it in Italy.
Wow.
And I've seen it. So what I'm saying is that I find you one of the most fascinating people that I've ever talked with about this, because you've got this extraordinary opportunity here.
Yeah.
Because you've earned this position in life where you have a chance to fulfill your dream of figuring this stuff out.
Yeah. A few months ago, I was in Washington, and it was during the inauguration weekend. I was there because of the UFC.
Yes.
And I was invited to many different meetings, and for most of them were related to the veteran, the war veteran.
Yeah.
But one of the dinner, the first night I went there, one of the dinner at night, we're in a restaurant. I was on a table with about 15 people. It was myself, one guy that was there was Tim Kennedy and Gordon Ryan. He was a training partner of mine. He's the best jiu-jitsu guy in the world. And all the other guys that were there around the table were all military. Like some were in I can't remember exactly their rank, but some were high rank and like they work in different divisions.
Yes.
And during the dinner, I was... always been passionate about that subject, but I never had the validation of someone with that will probably be firsthand or know people firsthand.
Yeah.
Because all the stuff I've read is, like I've seen documentary stuff online, but
yeah.
So during the dinner at one point, I'm telling myself that, George, this will be an opportunity of a lifetime. If you have an opportunity to ask the question to people who would know it's now or never.
Yeah.
So to the detriment, I've been thinking, to the detriment of losing my credibility and my reputation in front of the entire table, fuck it, I'm gonna ask that question. So there was a lady in front of me that was sitting there, and apparently she's pretty high rank.
Yeah.
And I start telling her about one of the sightings that I have of what I consider, I'm not an astrophysicist, I don't have the background. I don't know what I saw, but it seems something very, very strange. And I told her that I've seen something in the sky, I wasn't alone, and it was doing certain maneuver it exhibits certain maneuver that, there's nothing I can think of that we have that does the same thing, and then it skipped, and it disappeared. And then I asked her, I say, am I crazy, or is there something going on, And she says to me, like, no, you're not crazy. There's really something going on. And then after the dinner, another gentleman took me alone and showed me, a few things, and to have the validation from people like this, it really shifted my paradigm. You know what I mean? Because these are the people that are implicated in the military. So they know. These are the people who knows. If it's true or not, if it's bullshit, and to have the validation from these people that tells me it's a real phenomenon.
That's me too. Because Lou Elizondo just called me up out of the blue and said, look, that these people are lying like mad, saying they don't know who I am and that I've never had anything to do with I want to file a complaint with the Inspector General, the Defense Department. He said, and I've heard all about you. You were John Mack's lawyer. You were the lawyer for the Disclosure Project. I want you to consider representing me. So I said, well, let's talk. So I said, because we come from completely different backgrounds, and may have different views on things. So I went down to talk to him in Ensenadas. He was down because that's where the Two Stars Academy headquarters was then.
Christopher Mellon and
so I go down and I sat and he and I had a couple good long meetings, and we understood that we had kind of different perspectives. We were coming from different places, but he was offended constitutionally. Offended at the fact that the Congress was being lied to by this. It wasn't just that they were dissing him, which he was pissed off about, but they were lying to the Congress and to the people. He thought this was a total absurdity that they were doing this.
These are the people that we trust for our security. So to not take them seriously would be, it would be foolish in a way.
Undermining our own security.
I know the argument would be like, oh, they suffer from post-traumatic war syndrome. I mean, they try to discredit. Maybe some of them do, but the masses there's too many of them.
There's too many of the folks. We got 40 of the guys now that have come and talked to the Senate Intelligence Committee under oath, in depositions to be able to be asked questions and give documents and everything. They're sitting on it. The Senate Intelligence Committee is sitting on it, but they're the ones that drafted this. This basically came out of the Senate Intelligence Committee. They're the ones that know all this stuff. And so they laid this out, said, this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to lay it out over a 7-year period. We're going to have this committee established. We're going to have the president appoint them. We're going to have everybody on board. And at the same time, this commission, this 9-person board of review, they're assigned in here. You'll read it. They have to prepare the UFO Controlled Disclosure Campaign Plan.
Controlled.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's that? They believe the society will go mad, or
no?
Religions is that?
They've got to have a process, they think, whereby amnesty is going to be provided to some of the people who have some of the key information, because they won't cough it up because it's self-incriminating.
Oh, I see what you mean.
So that they need.
They have done harms.
That's right. They know where the bodies are buried, basically, as a term of art. It's just a metaphor. But they know the answer to the questions. But if they answer those questions, it's incriminating. For example, if they've been involved in authorizing the shooting down of the UFOs and possibly killing some of the occupants in the UFOs. And say, well, that's an act of war. That they're engaged in.
It's an act of war from our perspective, and maybe from their perspective they're so much smarter.
They're just saying, that's how those people act sometimes. It's like a gorilla attacking one of our scientists that's going into the jungle to investigate. We go, well, that's what gorillas do.
If I jump in a cage with a tiger, the good chance.
They bit me. It's the famous Russian. One of the CIA guy told me. He said, there's because he was making fun of me of the fact that I was put off by the fact that the guys were lying to me, right? He said, hey, look, there's the famous story that the Russians tell that, this little old lady that lived way out on the steppes of Russia, and it was in the dead of winter, and it was super, 30 below zero, and she went out to get some wood to bring into her stove, and she picks up the wood, and there was a snake there that was frozen. And she picks the snake up and she brings it in and she puts it down by the hearth of the fireplace, and she gets to get warm and stuff like this. And the snake is getting warm and it's starting to get unthawed. And she reaches down and kind of strokes the thing, and the snake bites her in the hand. And she says, I can't believe this. I said, you were out there frozen, and I bring you in here and put you in the stove, and I'm just stroking you, and you bite me in the hand. And the snake looks up and says, Well, gee, lady, that's what snakes do. So that these people will do that, and so you can't take umbrage at it or a kind of personal offense.
Yeah.
You say, okay, look, I understand, and I don't even reflect upon it, but I should sometime about how they're perceiving me, But I just say, look, you called me. You're the one that called me. And whatever it is that you want me to do, I'm doing what I do, and I'll do it, with you. And if you give me information and I'm allowed to tell people about it, I'll tell people, And he's never lied to me. He doesn't tell me things. I've been in meetings with the Inspector General where they all get up out of the room and go out because they're going to talk about something classified, and I'm sitting there all by myself. And then they come back in the room and they keep on. When you're going, keep on going. They don't. But they didn't feel like comfortable telling me to get up and leave. I see because I was the lawyer. So but it's been an extraordinarily important experience in my life, getting to meet all these guys. I get to meet Colonel Carl Nell. I get to meet Hal Puthoff. I get to meet Russell Targ. I get to meet all of these people that know, and you can sit and talk with them, and they know, and they know they know, so they don't need to lie. They just say, I can't tell you.
This is one of my thing nowadays. Like it's my one of the things I enjoy the most now with my freedom is to talk to people that has the knowledge, but of course they can't break the secrecy oath that they have, but like just that they can tell me up to the line they're allowed to tell me, like, man, it's unbelievable. Knowledge for me is the most important.
Actually, when you get to talk to 4 or 5 people, and they all
put the piece of the puzzle.
They all get up kind of the line to different places, and then you can say, okay, now I get it. And so, but we're at this extraordinary spot right now, George, where this is getting ready to happen. We have to make sure that it's done responsibly. We have to make sure that the control is responsible control that gives us time to kind of adjust the institutions of our human civilization. But we have to make sure that it doesn't keep secret things that our people need to know.
Yeah.
And it's but all time may be measured from the next 5 years. Instead of it being 2025, it could be the year 1.
And listen, I'm gonna dive into this starting tonight. I'm gonna start reading. I thank you so much. It's like really appreciated that you're able to share with me these information that you have. And
well, look, you call me. My phone is right there.
Amazing.
And you call me anytime. It's and you and I'll chat.
Man, when I heard that I received the email that I wanted to do this podcast, I was thrilled. I was like, normally it goes through the funnel of my agent, and I was like, no, I'm taking this. This is personal. I love it. Like, well, thank you very much. Yeah,
you are more than welcome. I'm delighted, and we'll do this a lot.
I hope so.
You and I'll get to talk. Yeah, I'll get to talk a lot about this.